What's your favorite scary movie?
Scream in '96. Let's talk Scream and Wes Craven reinvigorating the horror genre. Really,
Yeah.
You got any info you want to get off your chest up front about the whodunits?
All right. So as he said, this film came out in 1996, a year before we graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
Just to put a little date on us.
And now, thanks. A little bit for you. There you go.
It runs 1 hour and 51 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed, like he said, by Wes Craven. Little trivia coming up about Wes Craven coming up in a little bit. It was written by Kevin Williams, not Wes Craven.
Yep.
And the cinematographer, another pedigree guy.
It shows.
Mark Irwin. Mark Irwin.
Yep.
You know what he's known for?
Shoot.
Let's shoot about that time frame. We're going to RoboCop 2. We're going to put Old School on there.
With the comedy with Luke Wilson and Vince Vaughn. Dude, one of my favorites. Top 3 comedy. Love it. We're going streaking!
There's Something About Mary.
Dude, a banger in the 90s.
No, I wasn't.
Mom,
I was.
Shit.
Banger comedy.
Big Mama House.
Dude, love me some Big Mama House of Martin Lawrence.
And Road Trip.
Road Trip, another good one with Breckenmeyer and Stifler before he was Stifler, I think.
And Scotty doesn't know.
Yep. See?
No Stifler in this one. They had a guy who was trying to be Stifler.
Wasn't Stifler the one Stifler was the one that stole the van for him from the blind school? He just wasn't Stifler.
Oh, we're talking about Road. No,
I'm talking about Road Trip. Yeah.
I'm thinking Euro Trip.
You're thinking yes.
Yeah,
No. Road Trip had Stifler stole the bus from the blind school.
Yeah,
which was hysterical.
And then it had the skinny guy.
The skinny kid. Yep.
Yep.
Who was famous for like 8 minutes after that and did a couple other things. It was on an episode of Breaking Bad as a skinny cop, which was hilarious.
And Criminal Minds is one of the
Criminal Minds. Yep. True. But yeah, dude, what else you got on Scream on the technical side? Anything else? Or do you want to talk story?
Let's talk story before we get into one of my big research points that I did on this one. The thing I have to say about Scream is that this movie is a love letter to slasher films from the 70s and 80s. It was pretty much written that way.
Yep.
So it was the big movie at the time when we were in high school.
Dude, I don't know if you got into numbers on this, but I just heard another show talking about another show reviewed Scream earlier in the week, so the budget and that whole thing is fresh in my mind. Did you come across numbers? Because we usually don't talk about it for horror flicks.
No, I didn't get the numbers on this.
So check this out. The budget for this back in '96 was 17 mil. What do you think it returned box office?
I'm going at least 450 million.
Oh, okay? Forget it. You're way over. You're still on $23. It returned $178 million on 14 million. Readjusted down for inflation, absolutely amazing for 1996.
Well,
destroyed the box office. Destroyed.
We have to think that, of course, all horror films have a great ROI, return on investment.
You have to, unless you're The Exorcist that came out this weekend, or that's coming out because it only opened to like 2.2 million. That's going to be a problem. But your point is well received.
But I mean, if you really think about it, there's only 4 real sets. There's only 4 setups. You have the opening kill scene. You have the high school. You have the small scene that's at Nev Campbell's house.
Yep.
And then you have the final
at
scene.
the end. Yep. Pretty much. And because most of the actors were unknown, except for probably Courtney Cox, you know what I mean?
Courtney Cox and Drew Barrymore.
But Drew Barrymore would have been the A-lister, and I was hearing on another show also, and full credit to them at Salty Nerd Podcast for that. It was Drew Barrymore's idea because she was cast. I guess she was cast as Sidney Prescott, but it was her idea to throw everybody off and take on the role of Casey in that first opening thing. She's like, nobody will see this coming. It'll be better if I do this. I'll take less money and less exposure. I'll still get top billing because otherwise it would ruin the trap. You know, brilliant.
Do you know what that's a call back to? Of her doing that?
Of her making that choice, or her being in that scene?
Her making that choice.
No.
As the big actress who dies early in a movie.
Oh, Jennifer Jason Leigh for Psycho?
Yes, that is right.
Boom! Your boy's on point today, dude. How you like that? And you like them apples. I don't know shit about who shot this, but if I think for a minute, I know the big ones. Good, right? There we go. But dude, let's talk about the quickness of Scream real quick, and then get into that first scene, because that first scene probably the best part of the movie in my opinion, except maybe the big twist at the end, because that's like M. Night Shyamalan level of twists. Like they kind of set the stage for that. But the movie, it's smart, but it is kind of generic slasher in the middle. But them first 10 minutes with Drew Barrymore are like an epic movie of its own. It could have been a short film by itself.
Yes.
Right?
Intently, a scene in a movie should be its own.
Yes.
When you're doing this, should be its own short movie. It needs to have it up and down. It needs to have its own parts. And it needs to be able to move the plot forward.
It has to bridge it forward, right?
It's perfect.
Let me make an unusual comparison here, and we'll see if you agree. The first 10 minutes of this movie remind me of the first 10 minutes of the 3 Indiana Jones movies. There are no part 4 and part 5. Where it's Indiana Jones who has a goal. He needs to acquire an artifact. He gets into some shit, and he usually fails, right? This movie is Drew Barrymore. Right, exactly. I punch him in the face, and I jump over the side of the ship, and it's always cool. Right? The beginning of this movie felt like that. There was a setup. It was the babysitter motif in the house, right? Mm-hmm. She takes the scary call. They have the fun and games section, and at the end, the killer wins because it's a folktale. You know what I mean? Yep. So it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Which then, like you said, they cleverly disguised her role in the film, the actress's role, and then they segued it into the cast of characters meaningfully. She had, and her boyfriend, Drew Barrymore, and boyfriend Steve, had connections to the main cast of characters. Yeah. So it wasn't some throwaway like prologue that didn't amount to anything. These were kids in their graduating class, presumably, so it was close to home. And I love that about this movie. I thought that was a brilliant way to draw me in and keep me.
Yeah. So you know what that's like. So I have here of all the different movie references that you can outline in this whole thing.
Oh yeah, dude.
That
Dozens.
whole opening scene is a callback to When a Stranger Calls and When a Stranger Calls Back. The difference is that the When a Stranger Calls, which is a classic film from the 1970s, that's the famous line: "The call's coming from inside the house."
Listen to me. We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house. A squad car's on the way over there right now. Just get out of that house.
Which itself comes from from the old folktale of the babysitter, which is the babysitter calls the cop, and that's Mm-hmm.
And then the sequel, which is The Stranger Calls Back, that's exactly what Scream was, where it was like the guy was outside watching them through the windows and telling her what she's doing from watching from the doors and the windows and stuff like that. So that's exactly what this plays to. Like I said, this movie was a love letter to horror films.
Dude, 100% agree. And I'll do you one further than that. It was creatively a love letter to all the horror that came before, because obviously Wes Craven has that connection via Nightmare on Elm Street and the other things that he's done. But it was also, as you know, as I'm not smart for saying this, everyone knows this, it was a brilliant meta parody of all those movies with all the callbacks, with the great scene at the end of the movie where Stu's watching was he watching Psycho, and he's like, oh, she's behind you, the killer's behind you, and Randy's behind him ready to kill him. There were like 3 or 4 moments of that. Oh, she was right, it was Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Right.
Yep. It's the only way they did her in the movie.
Right. And they had the other scene where, Nev Campbell finally is giving in to the boyfriend, and Stu's calling out, okay, this is the tit shot, here we go. And the next frame is Nev Campbell whipping the top off. And I'm like, this is effing brilliant. Like, this is stuff that nobody did in these slasher flicks. And this is why Scream gets all the rightful credit in the world as having reinvigorated the genre. By Halloween Part 9 and Jason Part 46 in space and Freddy 35 3D, these movies were just excuses to butcher teens at this point. They were all cardboard cutouts. None of them had any personalities. A few of them had gimmicks, like throughout Nightmare on Elm Street, like one of the kids an artist, one's a skateboarder. Jason had the black kid that was a boxer, got decapitated by Jason, and Jason Takes Manhattan. They were all paper thin and nobody cares. This was a cast of characters in this movie that you went to high school with, that I went to high school with. We all knew people like this. They were familiar, and each of the actors brought enough credibility in those roles, like, Skeet Ulrich being the bizarre, obviously the fucking killer boyfriend. This was Matthew Lillard's first movie, and he was the only one that was over the top. So it didn't grate on my nerves. And I'm like, I was a kid in the 90s. I knew a douchebag like that. Like, it doesn't seem out of place. You know, and I love that about the cast. Rose McGowan was the mean girl, the hot mean girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who am I missing? Nev Campbell was the quintessential girl next door coming off Party of Five.
Yep.
Like everybody loved that chick back in the 90s.
Yeah, she was just coming into her own as an actress with
This was
Party
her
of
first movie, I
Five
think.
and stuff like that.
I think it was her first
No, she
feature
was a couple
film.
movies before that.
She had feature films before Scream? Oh, I didn't know that. Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I had her whole filmology up, but I don't have it anymore, and I
No
didn't
worries.
write any down.
I didn't know she was. I thought her big thing was Party of Five for sure. That had to be like her name maker, right?
Yeah, and the only one who really had a name other than Drew Barrymore was Courtney Cox as a friend.
Right. It was Friends.
Her in her music videos, because she was in Bruce Springsteen's movie
Bruce Springsteen.
music video. Was it Dancing in the Dark.
Yep. Yeah, she gets pulled up on stage.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that's great about this movie, just in terms of the actors that are in it. Like Courtney Cox had to lobby to be the bitchy reporter because she didn't want to be typecast as the stuck-up OCD chick from Friends. And her role in this couldn't have been any different than her role as Monica Geller on Friends. The same thing with Matthew Lillard. Like, this was his first film role. Like, I guess he was with his girlfriend at the time who was auditioning for something else in one of the adjacent lots, and one of the producers of Scream just happened to like his look and just talked him into auditioning, and he got the role. And like his career exploded after that. I mean, dude's done pretty good for himself in all kinds of different shit for like 40
And
years.
Just one thing to toot my own horn here. I have
we go.
worked with Matthew Lillard. I
Yeah,
worked
you
with him
told
on
me.
a film in Augusta, Georgia.
Nice.
And I do have a picture with him. We're going to put it up right here.
There we go.
Yep, there he is. You can see him. All right.
Dude, it's super cool. So we gushed about the movie without giving the good folks listening, and we do appreciate you guys listening. And side note, because Kingsy usually does this, I'll do it tonight. If you enjoy us breaking down stuff on a more friendly, polite, enjoyable level instead of just trashing Ahsoka and crappy shows like Secret Invasion, join our conversation in the comments below. Pitch us a couple of movies that we can review for you and talk about during the horror season. You know, sub to the channel if you want to hang out, ring the bell, all that good stuff. But dude, Scream is pretty standard in terms of slasher story, but where it gets better is they turn it into the murder mystery whodunit thing. Nobody was ever trying to figure out who Freddy was. Nobody was trying to figure out who Michael Myers was because Dr. Loomis knew. You know, nobody cared who Jason was. This entire fucking town was trying to figure out what the hell was going on, who was butchering up these kids.
Yep.
You know, and as the audience, you never knew more than the characters. I mean, unless you were astute to certain details, like when Nev Campbell in the first scene is making out with her boyfriend and Fear the Reaper is the background song. I'm like, okay, it's probably him. But anyway.
I just wish they would watch Prom Night. It's a very simple formula.
It's right there, right? I know, dude. That was one of the better parts. So like we get the setup where it's Drew Barrymore and the daughter and the boyfriend are killed early. The murders start to trickle down into the school system. We figure out Sidney Prescott's a girl that has a terrible trauma past. Her mother was murdered in a high-profile case. And then basically she has to survive long enough to figure out who's trying to do this shit. Things happen. She loses some friends and allies. Plot twist occurs at the end. Tell us about the plot twist, because I think that's the other high point of this movie beyond the opening.
So the plot twist that's different from all other slasher films is that there was two killers.
Boop.
And a lot of people was not expecting that. Everyone, they played it all the way to the end, and then you find out like he's like, "What's it?" I forget the character's name. He's like, he's acting crazy, and then all of a sudden he has that quote from Psycho. Goes, "Everyone goes mad a little once in a while."
Everybody goes a little crazy, and then he quotes Psycho when he says it. Yeah, yep.
He's like,
yeah, it was Billy.
Great
Billy
line
was
from Psycho.
It was Ski Ulrich. That was Billy.
Yeah, Billy was the one who shot him. And what
Billy was Billy was Discount Johnny Depp, is what I've been calling him.
Yeah, who had a great series. If you want to check it out, called Jericho. It only ran for 2 seasons. It had a full 22 episode run for season 1.
Real show, not streaming. Yeah, real show. Yeah,
and a 10 episode run for season 2 because they want to wrap it up. Because one of the great things is at the end of the season 1, they canceled it. And the last line they said was nuts, which is the famous World War II line when 101st was surrounded by the Germans. They asked for their surrender, and the commander replied with a one-word answer, nuts. And so he said that, and so when they canceled it, the fans of the show sent in 22 million nuts to the studio.
That'll do it.
So, and they brought the show back for a 10 episode run to trying to wrap up the story type thing for the fans.
Yep. So, the two killers at the end of this, right, was Nev Campbell's boyfriend, and I think that was kind of telegraphed. But then seemingly out of the blue, and if you weren't paying attention, Randy's the second killer.
Yep.
Rose McGowan's boyfriend in the movie is the second killer. And the only time they allude to any of his nonsense, except for his weird over-the-top behavior, is the scene at the beginning where they're sitting in front of the fountain and they're all conversing about the who it could be and this, that, and the other thing. In a one-off line, they mention that he used to date Casey, who was Drew Barrymore's character, who was murdered at the beginning. And he goes, "Oh, I thought you dumped her to be with me," says Rose McGowan. He's like, "I totally did," but nobody believes him. Yeah. So you see that there might be some sour grapes there. But one of my complaints with this movie, and I don't know if you had the same nitpick, is I thought that was kind of a weak connection between him being involved with Billy and wanting to get involved in the mass murder scene. Like, do we really think it was that breakup that like sent him completely crazy?
No,
because
not at
the
all.
90s was a thing, like they said.
I think he showed quintessential signs of being a psychopath to begin with.
You think so?
And Billy just enabled him, and they chose someone that he was connected to get his first murder out of the way. Because if you notice in the first murder with Casey, he hesitates for a moment before plunging down that knife.
That's true. So you're
and that's the time where it was actually snapping in his head that let's do this.
True. All right, I guess if I go back and think about it, I could see it that way. Yeah, so I think it was great having the two killer twist. I think they played that idea to death because they repeated that in part 2. Then there was like 9 killers in part 3, and then in Scream 4 it was like a whole town or some shit. I made all that up, but there were definitely multiple killers going forward. I think for parts 2 and 3. I think in Scream 4
they brought it back for 5 and 6.
Right, and then in oh dude, you just spoiled 6 for me, you dickhead. I haven't seen that yet. Anyway. But in part 4, it was just like her one cousin or something was like, "Oh, it's the new generation's turn," or blah blah. That was just stupid. I think Scream 1 is great. 2 and 3, I probably would never ever recommend anybody to watch again, like unless you loved them.
The only thing I liked about
4's the
2
same.
was, of course, Jamie Kennedy's character.
Oh yeah, everybody loves Stu. Right.
And when they asked him like, "What's your favorite scary movie?" He's like, "Showgirls."
Yep. That he played, that was one of his less annoying roles. I liked him in the role of movie buff, movie geek. I think, but the franchise itself hasn't done as well as I'd like it to. I guess 5 I thought was okay, minus that one particular character death, which was asinine. You know who I'm talking about. It was an honor. That was awful. And I haven't seen 6 yet. Maybe I'll watch that and do like a 1 to 6 comparison. But yeah, dude, I like Scream. It's the only other talking point I had was I took a couple of notes on the timeline. I kept flicking it up on the screen so I could see as things went on. Dude, it very efficiently moved through its time. Where did I have it there? Oh, it's at about the 20% mark when Sydney takes her first scary call from the killers. You know what I mean? It's at about the 2/3 mark where she decides that she's actually going to put out and give it up to Skeet Ulrich, and that's kind of like the gateway to Act 3, and then it all goes downhill from there. So it all moved right along at such a brisk pace, and I just wanted to ask you, is one of the problems with modern movies that they run too long, even if they are good? Like, I'm not talking about crappy Star Wars or Indiana Jones 5, which I didn't like. Do you think things they just run too long now, or no? Do you think it's just a question of writing quality?
No, it's mostly writing quality. I mean, what they're trying to do now, like you saw a huge trend of about 2-hour long movies.
Yeah.
And then they brought it down, and now they're bringing it back up because trying to expand that attention span, and some stories need that longer burn to build the story a little bit. I mean, Oppenheimer, how can you tell the whole story of Oppenheimer? I was just going to say that. It's a 3-hour movie. I mean,
I was just going to say that.
What would you cut from Return of the King? Which is like a 2-hour and 45-minute movie.
And they tried that, and everybody realized the director's cut was the superior film by far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, I guess I can see that. I think that sometimes the movies with these bloated runtimes, I think if they're hovering at a mediocre grade, running 20 minutes long, it just pisses me off. And then I'm like, no, this wasn't as good as, you know what I mean? It just starts to bleed into the rest of the critiquing of it. But dude, you got anything else on Scream, or do you want to jump into The Conjuring?
So as I was talking about how this was a love letter, here's all the different horror movies that were referenced
Punch it.
in Scream. First off, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
You have Halloween. You actually watched the part of Halloween in it.
And the janitor had the Freddy sweater on. Was that the reference you were going with? Yep.
Friday the 13th. The Exorcist.
Yep.
And do you know where The Exorcist was mentioned in it?
That would be Linda Blair being one of the reporters asking
Yep.
for Sydney's time.
Yep. Prom night, of course. It's
Prom
a
night,
very
yep.
simple formula.
Yep. Psycho.
Carrie, he's like,
Where was Carrie?
he's like corn syrup, just like in Carrie.
Oh, yeah. At the end with the blood. Yep.
A town that dreads showdowns. I don't know
Sundown.
what that reference was. Yeah, Sundown.
A Town That Dreads Sundown. Yep.
Friday the 13th Part 2, because they talked about like
Jason
Fred,
Voorhees'
Jason was the
mom,
killer,
yep.
was the killer. Halloween 2, because they
Yep.
talked about Jamie Lee Curtis coming back. I Spit on Your Grave, which
Yep.
she said, I spit on your garage.
Yep. Hey, can we talk about that? Let me interrupt you. Can we talk about that scene real quick and how stupid it was, but how great it is at the same time? That like, it's not only is it the world's strongest garage door opener to pick up a human body, right? But it would stop. Number 2 and number 3, she clearly fit through it. Like
Yeah.
she had both of her shoulders through it. That's the widest part of that girl's body at that time. Like she was out. All she had to do was keep going.
Yep.
Hilarious. But anyway, continue.
And Basic Instinct.
Oh yeah, because they were talking about your mom's no Sharon Stone or whatever she said, right?
Yeah,
they
because
were kind of talking smack.
Yeah, they were talking. Yeah, she's like, "How you know it's not a female killer? Could have done it." Like, and then she brought up Basic Instinct where she did it with the ice pick.
Yep. Psycho too, because that's what Billy says when they have Nev Campbell cornered in the hallway right as Randy comes in. He says everybody goes a little crazy or whatever.
Yeah,
that's something I think that was.
Yeah,
that was
I already brought up the
Anthony
Psycho, and then when a stranger calls and when a stranger calls back.
Yep. Good. So that was like 10 references there. So yeah, you're right. Dude. It's an absolute love letter to the genre, which I appreciate. And just like the Thing, and then we'll jump into The Conjuring. It's readily apparent that everybody in this, even the Fonz as the principal, just took everything serious. Like this, they weren't there to tell like a parody or a goofy kind of a Goosebumps kind of horror movie. Like some of the stuff like where the people fight back against Ghostface approach Goofy with like hitting him in the nuts with like a kick or like a bottle of beer. But when he cornered that person and got him dead to rights, like that, the funny was over. Like there were people that were scared they were being killed. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't mind him taking the refrigerator door to the face. Like it got brutal when it needed to be brutal.
Because it kind of got a little real, unlike the kids that are in the earlier 80 films where they pretty much just dudes walking and then they fall down.
Right.
And then he's right there on top of them.
That's what I mean.
Even though he's like half a mile away.
Right. Like Nev Campbell like dropped like a sweep on one of them and put him down and then recovered with a nut kick. And like the other chick had the sense of mind to throw beer bottles and then sling the door into his face.
Yeah.
You know, we got chase scenes up the stairs. That's another great thing. Like they kind of attack some of those tropes from those crappy movies where they're like, where the point of her phone call is, you know, the chick has the big tits and she always runs up the stairs instead of out the door. And then of course the shit hits the fan for her and she tries to run out the front door, but because she locked it with the chain, she couldn't open it. So she had to run up the stairs. And I just thought it was clever. And I like that because I don't think we get anything like that now. You know what I mean? I think that's missing from most of our stuff.
So we talked about Wes Craven. Wes Craven directed this. He's also famous for making the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Yep.
You know what other major horror franchise that he helped start?
Wishmaster?
Nah, that ain't the one I'm thinking of. I'm talking about the very beginning of the slasher films. Because Halloween, of course, was first.
That was John Carpenter, yeah.
Yep.
I think it's Wishmaster, but if you're thinking of something else, I don't know what the other one is.
Friday the 13th. He lived
Craven
down the
was
hall.
in on that?
He
Get out of here.
down the hall from the guy. And this was when Wes Craven was just getting into writing. Do you know what Wes Craven did before he started writing films?
No.
He was a school teacher.
That makes sense because, you know, you got to be fairly intelligent and well-written, well-spoken, organized.
Yeah, and he wasn't into horror. He was looking to write rom-coms.
But see, I can see that working though because it's neighboring circles in drama and comedy. You know what I mean? It's exactly like that. Any good rom-com, if you throw violence into it, makes for a good horror movie. You know what I mean? And any good horror flick, typically, if you remove the violence, could be a comedy with people tripping down and making stupid decisions. And you know, if you have snappy dialogue, that could work. So I could completely see that. That doesn't surprise me.